Hey everybody, it's Manny Aragon here again from the Rolf Workshop Center for Structural Performance with episode number 12 of the Structural Performance Podcast. And today we're going to try something a little different. I actually have my wife on the line, Cristobal Tabata. She is a licensed acupuncturist and has a private practice also in Costa Mesa. Not in my office, believe it or not. Down the street. She's in a fantastic clinic. And anyway, what I thought we would do today is talk a little bit about seasonal immunity issues and how when seasons change, people tend to fall ill and how you can avoid that, because both of us see that in our practices, and it's kind of like a running joke. It's like when fall comes around, and even in spring, you'll see it. So with that, thanks for joining me today, Cristobal. Hopefully this can be the first of many.
Great. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Okay. So it's a pretty simple, straightforward thing. I mean, you probably see things a little bit differently from me in your clinic, but I mean, I'm doing, structural body work, and you're doing a little more of an internal medicine type of thing. But, typically, like probably right before school starts, so in August time frame is when it kind of starts, would you say?
Right. Around August, it depends. I mean, like in Southern California, the transition is so slight because it's either sunny or rainy and not really real seasons like you see in the East Coast. It's just, one day it starts transitioning into a colder weather, and then the next day even colder. But here it's kind of weird, basically. But I do see it around August, as early as August, as late as October, which is what we're doing right now. So and sometimes even November, depending on what kind of year we're having. So, but when it transitions, that's usually around the fall and also around the spring. And when people start getting sick, I start seeing cases. They come in clumps. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's like, I think at least in the fall, I don't know if I've noticed this about the spring yet or not, but now I want to pay attention. But at least in the fall, there seems, at least this year in particular, seems to be like a double hump. Like right before school, so like in August, everybody's taking like family vacations. They're going totally nuts, dressing themselves out, right? And then the parents get sick, or they don't until the kids go to school. The kids immediately get sick. But those kids don't just suddenly get sick. Somebody was sick who got other people sick. So it's like that wave kind of starts, and then it dissipates. And then because at least in Southern California, our weather is like, the weather doesn't change in August. It just gets hotter. So it's like that wave of life-changing stress and stuff that we'll talk about in a minute. And then there's the weather change bolus that happens, which is like right now, where all of a sudden this week it's been overcast all week. It's still kind of warm, but there's been a couple cold days. The nights have suddenly become cool. It just kind of, it's that little nudge or whatever. But
right. Well, it's kind of also not just attributed to the weather, but it's also attributed to the stressors of the body, because weather is one stressor, of course, but if you think about the beginning of school, the transition from kids being so happy and joyful, running around, not really stressed out, and then the beginning of school when they actually have to buckle down and start paying attention to learning, that causes a big stressor on the children, and so their immune function goes down. And like at the same time, the parents are trying to transition their schedules from, having to run around with the children all summer and then transition into buckling down themselves and focusing on work again, because they had to kind of diversify their time. And now they're like solidly in work mode and getting the kids' homework done. So there's another added stressor that comes on with everybody during this particular one. And it's always harder to transition into colder weather and easier to transition into warmer weather. So we kind of get that.
Right, which is interesting because people still get sick in the spring, summer. There's still like waves that go on, but you brought up a really good point, and that and you know, obviously we have children, and so it's like this. You know, when you mentioned the homework thing, I totally forgot about that because there's so much to that, and you know, it's like, for example, our older son, Paolo, is starting fourth grade this year. So fourth grade, at least where we go to school, third grade is about still learning the functional basics, like you got to get your reading solid, you got to get your times tables down, you got to, you know, practice your basic writing things. But fourth grade, he's in a class with 4, 5, 6 all together. And so fourth graders come in and immediately it's about scheduling your time. It's about, like, they don't say like, oh, let's learn how to read. That's expected to be done. Like, that's a base skill now. So you're expected to come in and get a project done, which requires reading, requires math, requires, you know, all this, you know, putting reports together and things like that, writing 5-paragraph essays, all kinds of different things, artwork, presentations. And, you know, that's like this, my son, for example, is quite stressed out by that. We should probably have a kids issue later on where we talk more about kids-specific things and the things that come up with that. Because
absolutely, for sure.
Yeah,
because
I mean that's like your expertise. Christabel's a pediatric specialist, so kind of cool.
And you know what pediatric specialist means is parent specialist too, because we all go nuts when our kids there's something wrong with our kids. So.
Isn't that true? That's so true. So if you're like a endurance athlete and you're wondering like how this applies to you, and you don't have kids, don't worry. There's plenty of. If you look in the broader sense and listen in the broader sense of what we're saying, it's applicable. And you can look at, say, you're an Ironman triathlete and you're going to be doing a periodized training schedule, right? There's a period where you're peaking in your training. That's going to be your highest point of stress. So that would be like the August schedule for parents, August through November schedule for parents, where, you know, they're going into a highly stressful period. They're also highly vulnerable to getting sick. And so it's a very risky time when you sometimes feel your strongest. And maybe we could talk a little bit about this as well, Christabel, the seasonal, this is something where I think, like Chinese medicine has just a kind of a more fundamental understanding of the seasonality and the way it impacts our constitution. So like, for example, you know, we're going from summer where the energy and the sun and everything is high and hot, and we wake up early, we're full of energy, we heal quickly, even our sexuality is like probably magnified during the summer. And then you go into fall, and what I notice is that people don't acknowledge that they're making this transition, and they continue, pedal to the metal, forward like they were going through the summer as they go into fall.
Right. And, it's very easy to do that here in Southern California, where the winters are so mild in comparison to the East Coast or in central U.S., where you do see snow and you are isolated and restricted to indoor activities. Whereas here, even in the middle of winter, there'll be a nice clear day and you'll have that urge or that, need to want to go out and take a bike ride for however umpteen miles you want to go. But, people forget that winter is about slowing down. The metabolism slows down, and this is why people get sick too, because the metabolism does slow down. That's what it's geared to do in the season, because this is the time where it's all about restoration, all about seeking and restoring the body balance. And kind of like that bear that goes into hibernation, he has to go out there and forage for a lot of food in order to survive a whole winter of hibernation. So there is where the body is truly maximizing its regeneration capacity is during the wintertime. And in Southern California, it's sunny almost every other day of the week, even in the the coldest part of our season. we can go out and go, oh, look, let's expend all this energy. And what we should really be thinking is, how can we conserve this energy so that we're banking for spring, when it's really time for our bodies to become more energetic, to be utilized that way. We forget in sunny Southern California that we need to acknowledge that it is winter season, and our body will have to make those transition changes. And you know what? Every single time I see, and this is very true for athletes, is that they push it through the winter months. They're pushing and they're pushing and pushing during the winter month, and they wonder why they peter out somewhere in about April, because they never really put that regenerative capacity into their body over the winter season. You know, you have to bank a certain amount of, energy, and, rebuilding that adrenal is really important during the winter season as well. And guess where that's what they're gonna start asking for in the spring and summertime. They're gonna be asking their adrenals to perform. And if they really haven't put it back into the bank account, you're not going to be able to do that very well. So
that's huge
about that.
Yeah, that's huge, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because it's like we forget, living in modern society, that we are actually creatures of nature, and so looking to nature for the signals that nature provides. Now, in our area, so we're kind of been beating Southern California up a little bit, but also, to its credit, and something you mentioned earlier, Southern California doesn't have radical seasonal changes. So our energy patterns are going to change, but not as radically, say, as they would if you lived in Canada, for example, where the summer is very short and intense, and then even the sun stays out, for like 18 hours a day and crazy things like that in the way northern hemisphere. And then it's like, during the winter, you're basically trying to stay alive, but here it's much mellower. So it's like we almost don't even notice the seasons, but they're there. The seasons are there. And you know what? Pay a little more attention.
I'm not asking for people to just shut down just because it's turning into winter, but I definitely want you to listen to your cues. When you're more tired, give your body that rest. If, for instance, we had this conversation last week when you're like, gosh, I really can't get up in the morning. I was like, well, don't get up in the morning. Figure out a way to use to do your exercises, to stay at your level of performance, and do your exercises when it's appropriate and that your energy is at that peak level, like midday. You're going to have to make that transition so you're not killing yourself trying to wake up at 5 a.m. going to that spin class. But maybe there's a spin class at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. That would be better. That would really be better, and that would really suit, you as a performance athlete should be doing. You have to realize that you need to transition your training times to appropriate times for the season, and in the summer, you can go all day. Your body has the capacity to go all day in the summer. That's what it should do. But in the wintertime, not the same picture, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and a good point. So let's get back for a second because I think all these are like totally applicable, and I want to try and tie them together a little bit so people can get like the practical application, because I think this is exactly why I was like so thrilled, to have you on, because it's like this is this different perspective that you, because of your schooling and the way that you've trained and watch people and things that you've noticed and what's influenced you, is that you're able to bring these things to our attention. So for example, traditionally, let's just beat up on triathlon for a minute in Southern California. Traditionally, triathlon has been a very seasonal sport. Traditionally, and it's something like April through October or something like that.
Right.
And those are the peak months of energy, right? Just like we discussed.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The peak months of energy, going from spring into summer. Now, that's the racing season. So the rest of the season is the off season. And there's a reason why it's the off season, because endurance sports are notorious, especially Ironman, are notorious for destroying the adrenal. People are doing, they're doing all this, zone 3 kind of mid-range, endurance training. And I think this is where the advent of the high-intensity training came in, to like supplement that so people could back off a little on their volume, because the training volume literally drains people. In fact, if you read the book Iron War about Dave Scott, the famous triathletes Dave Scott and Mark Allen, and their kind of battle, both of them being kind of, for those of you who are the uninitiated, both of them being 6-time Ironman world champions, and that's unmatched by anyone except for, on the women's side, Paula Newby-Fraser, who's won 8, even more uber. But nonetheless, Dave Scott would focus his entire year around training for the Hawaii Ironman World Championship. At the time, you could do that. Now, it's because it's so popular, you've got to actually race much more during the year. You've got to accumulate points. It's actually become even harder on the body. But Dave Scott, in particular, was known for his insane volume of training. Also Mark Allen, but Dave in particular. After the race, Dave would often go, for up to 2 or 3 months into seclusion and intense depression.
Right.
And all of the things associated with adrenal exhaustion.
Exactly.
Because he had totally and completely spent himself. Now, I don't know as much about Mark Allen's training methods. I do know that Mark Allen made Phil Maffetone famous with the Maffetone method, which is the kind of like mid-intensity, huge volume, or low-intensity, huge volume training. And but Mark also supplanted that with spiritual practices and other kind of holistic lifestyle practices that perhaps saved him from that same fate that Dave Scott, who was just balls to the wall, and training. Now, both amazing, phenomenal athletes. So that said, the off-season is there for a reason. And, Christabel, you make this amazing point that if we look to nature, we can see that off-season is for regeneration. So let's talk a little bit about specifics, like what are some of the, the signs? And we talked a little bit about this. So, seasonal illness or seasonal sickness or the things that take you down for a few days, even things like, your back going out, this can be attributed often to a lot of these same triggers. Right. And you mentioned a few of these earlier, but like life pattern changes. So kids are in school, holidays approaching, big race, whatever it is. Forgetting to change gears as the seasonal patterns change. We talked about that.
Right.
It leaves us vulnerable to invasion and it weakens us if we're not changing as the seasons
right.
change.
And, in a very simple way, I put it like this, which is, in the summertime or the springtime, the weather is nice and warm. So you go out there and you're exercising and your pores are very open because it needs to breathe. You need to perspire for the energy that you're, and the heat that you're generating from exercise. And that's all fine and well. And then you look at the winter season or as it gets cold and your pores are nice, big, open. And guess what? Your muscles, because of the contrast between the external environment and your internal environment, the external environment is saying, hey, it's cold out here. And your muscles, out of reaction, after you're done with the exercise, out of natural reaction, it will start to contract, And that dichotomy and that, you always want to look at the differential between the weather and you. And if you're at like 100 degrees from pumping up that hill and your weather outside is at 76, 60 degrees, or even 50 degrees in some cases, right? That differential is going to impact your body negatively. I'm not saying don't go out there and exercise, especially in the peak of the day when the temperature differential isn't as big, but then your body can actually react well to the changes. So if the temperature differential is not so significant, then your body reacts well. But if it's significant, then your body doesn't know what to do. You're giving it weird clues, and so it's trying to perform for you. But at the same time, its tendency is to do another, and that kind of causes what we call in Chinese medicine disharmony. So not only are you exposing yourself to the external environments, but which are much harsher than what's going on inside of you, but at the same time you're creating this disharmony physiologically inside the body, which trying to figure it out, and it's confused. So that's where illnesses start to happen. The earlier clues, as you said, Manny, what are the earlier clues? The earlier clues are just something as simple as not feeling comfortable. Like, you go out and you do that workout and you feel like, yeah, I am on fire. I got this lit. But, if you do that workout, you're like, man, that was just so darn hard. Why is it so darn hard? You got to check in, because that feeling of it's being so difficult is a clue to you that says, hey, there's something going on here that your body is trying to tell you, right? Your mind is trying to tell you, hey, let's power this. But your body say, step back a minute. Wait a minute. I'm not there yet with you. So you have to think about that a little bit. Why is the workout so hard? And you've done this a million times. It's probably because your body's telling you, hey, you need to make some adjustments here, whether it's nutritionally, whether it's your energy-wise or your adrenals, and you got to do that, something with that, or maybe you just need to take a rest, and let your body gather itself so it can perform for you when you ask it next time. So yeah, the earlier signs is malaise, like feeling like, oh, I'm being very lazy, or maybe appetite. And then, of course, the general, like, your skin tightness. There's some kind of skin tightness going on where you're, like, not feeling quite right in your skin. And to you athletes, you know what that feels like. You guys can pretty much tell to your very bone and your sinew that there's a connection when you're on. But when you start feeling that discomfort on the superficial level, in Chinese medicine, that's called an exterior invasion. So take note of that. Make sure you're looking at that and dealing with that.
Yeah, a couple things I want to note is for those folks listening that, I said earlier, Christabel's a pediatric specialist, but she also works in a sports medicine clinic that kind of specializes in athletes. So they've got athletes of all calibers, professional, Olympic level. And so the other thing to know is that as far as street credibility goes, is that, she was a collegiate athlete as well, all the way through childhood and into college, scholarship to a university on, I think it was volleyball, right? And you did crew, you've done a lot of different things. So she's not kind of like speaking from a place of non-experience. Like, she absolutely is an experienced competitive athlete. So, when we're talking about this, I think it's important to kind of get that, competitive athletes so often, there is a fine line, especially when you're competing, and especially in endurance sports, when your brain is telling you to stop. And you need to, in order to accomplish that thing that you're trying to accomplish, whether it be winning a race or a game or whatever, is you're trying to, shut that part down so that you can accomplish the task at hand. And for a moment, I'm just going to digress, and I'm going to make that kind of equivalent to a life and death response, that you're asking your body to, at those times when it's saying no. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. This is how people accomplish amazing feats. That you're asking of your body to draw from the well, so to speak. And you hear this, oh, I had to dig deep. Well, when you're digging deep, you got to dig something. If there's nothing left to dig, then you've got a problem at some point, right? The bottom falls out. So when you're digging deep, you're actually taking away from the storage capacity that you have, and at some point it's going to be diminished. So you've got to take that into consideration, that every time you dig deep, you can't just dig deep every day and expect to get away with it. It's not going to work. You're not going to, one, achieve your greatest feats, your greatest performances. You're going to get sick. You're going to injure out earlier in your lifetime than you would have if you would have held back. And a great example of what Christabel is saying, which I think is listening to your body within the context of the feat that you're trying to achieve, right? And I think that's important, that yes, sometimes we overcommit to things that are too much, but for the most part, if we have a realistic expectation and we've consulted with professionals perhaps, or done the research and figured out what is reasonable for most people to expect to accomplish, and then perhaps we go beyond that as we've done the first level of that. A great example of this on the world stage and at the very highest level of competition is Chris McCormick, who the triathletes are going to know. Everybody else probably won't. But Chris McCormick, or Macca as people call him, Macca is the winningest, most triathlete in history. Now, perhaps that's going to be eclipsed by God, I'm trying to remember the Spanish guy. He's an amazing Spanish athlete. He hasn't moved up to full distance yet, but he just dominated, just won the ITUs and then World Championships. And like a week or two later, he won 70.3 Ironman, half Ironman World Championships on a really difficult course. Anyway, he's become very dominant. But the point being that Chris McCormick, in his book, if you read his book, I'm Here to Win, whether you like Chris McCormick or not, because some people hate him, some people like him, he's very polarized. But Chris McCormick, in his book, states that he has never suffered a chronic long-term injury. And the reason why he believes that's the case is because he listens to his body. And there are days, and there are plenty of examples of this, of Chris in professional competition. There are days where Chris would say to himself, I am not feeling it today. I feel like I need to rest. And so he will either, one, dial back his workout, or he'll just simply take a day off. Unheard of at that level of competition. Well, Chris has never been injured. Chris is still competing into his 40s, doing very well. Now, is he at the top level? No, but so, for example, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, Ironman World Championships, Chris McCormick pulled out of the race, I don't know, sometime early in the bike. People could not shut up about how they were angry with him for doing that, how he was not good, how this was lame, and Ironman's all about finishing and all that. Wrong. Ironman is not about finishing. It's about finishing when you just started. When you're a professional athlete, it is not about finishing. I think Chris McCormick knows he could have finished any race he started. But where he's at, would he finish at a level that he was satisfied with, or does it make sense to spend that money in the race, so to speak, where he's not going to even come close to the result because he knows that he's having a bad day. He needs to just back off. And you know what? It takes balls to do that. And I give him credit for that. But that's exactly what I think Christabel is talking about. And it takes courage, because you might sacrifice later on because of that, but more than likely you won't. More than likely your body's going to recover better and allow you to perform better at a later date. But we're afraid that it won't. And that's the real thing that we're confronting, is the fear, right? The fear that, hey, if I slow down during the winter, I might not get everything done. But
right, that's very short-sighted, I think, because, if you really think about your body as a performance machine, right, eventually at some point you got to put gas in, Same thing with your body. At some point, your body needs that gas, that fuel, and it's going to stock up. It's better if you stock up on that fuel over the winter time, and then power through, be able to be that powerful machine that you can be in the spring. I don't understand sometimes when people think they can keep going and running on empty. I mean, they look like and they feel like they're performing, but, every day of the week I can point out an athlete that is running on fumes. And, as far as Chinese medicine is concerned, we're in it for the long haul. So honestly, they can understand endurance sports, but we live in today's society, so we have to modify that perspective, and so they're in it for a long haul. And in the end, you really got to fuel up the body appropriately in order to be able to perform in that season. Otherwise, you'll peter out before the season even gets to the height. So.
Yeah, huge. And so something that you mentioned actually personally to me during this conversation, which I even felt a visceral response to, and I'm being honest, but so that people can kind of get, what it doesn't always feel good. But Christabel made a recommendation to me that I'm gonna take seriously, and I'll tell you why I had a reaction to it. One, she told me that, hey, stop trying to get up early in the morning and do a hard workout if your body's not feeling it. Well, in the summer, that normally works for me. And last week, I just wasn't, I actually had a week off of exercise completely. One, I had overdone it and minorly injured myself, and so before I majorly injured myself, I backed off so I could recover. And then two, it's like I'm not feeling it. So, what is going on? So I decided last week I would listen to my body, take a week. I didn't say I'm going to take a week off. I just said I'm going to go day by day. And then when Sunday morning I got up and I went for, Saturday morning I got up and went down to Corona Del Mar for a swim. I felt fabulous. I didn't feel like I'd taken a week off at all. I got in the water. I had a fantastic swim. It was amazing. The water was beautiful. My body felt great. I felt strong. I felt fast in the water. And I went, you know what? This is good. Okay, so now I'm ready to go again. But what she suggested is that I shift my workout times. And so immediately, one, I was like, the first response was, and this is, just so I can be transparent with you. My first response was, why is she telling me what to do? Like, she has no idea. And then the second response was, if I don't get it done in the morning, it doesn't get done, right? Which I hear that a lot. But you know what? I'll be honest. I used to work out later in the day. Now I've been telling myself at some point, I started telling myself, if I don't get it done early, it won't get done. So I've effectively convinced myself that if I don't get it done early, I'm not going to exercise. And guess what? If I don't get it done early, I don't exercise later in the day. But I could adjust my schedule, which requires a little bit of work. It does. It requires a little bit of work, a little bit of juggling. Might be uncomfortable in the middle of the day where I'm like working out right after a client and then getting back and cleaning off and still being a little bit sweaty when my next client comes in. But probably I'll get a better workout. Probably I'll get more of a training response to that. And I will work out more consistently because I won't have as many days where I go, oh, I'm not feeling it, so I end up not working out because I've convinced myself that it doesn't happen early, it's not going to happen. So there's a couple pieces, but the main piece is mindset. It's really mindset. Have I decided that seasonally I need to change my lifestyle to step up and perform better? And that's a great point. So thank you for that. So for those out there, really look at that stuff because that's where the rubber hits the road is, are you willing to make a change in your lifestyle that might not be popular with you? Right, and perhaps some other people, but mainly with you. So okay.
Right.
So go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to segue into, if there is a reason why you're not feeling it or if there's a reason why you're feeling some sort of malaise and, look to that and, there are things you can do to help the process of healing, and those are going to be your supplements and your nutrition. So look to that and say, okay, what do I need to adjust? Okay, well, in the summertime, I can get along with having these things in my diet. Well, maybe in the wintertime, not so much. In the summertime, our body can easily process through more thicker substances, more stickier substances that it clogs the body down. Because just remember that in the wintertime, everything in your body slows down. And the reason why it does that is to conserve energy. The reason it does that is to start the rejuvenation process, the healing process. The healing process works the best when you sleep. because everything else doesn't have to expend any other energy but to sleep and to heal, and the growth hormone comes out of your body naturally and starts healing those tissues that you have injured or torn because you're working out hard. So in the winter season, look to make sure that your nutrition has been adjusted. And if you can't get any nutrition, make sure your supplements have been adjusted. I mean, it's so funny. You go to a doctor and they can't do anything to you but give antibiotics if you're sick enough. For me, that's the best time I want you in my clinic, because I can help adjust the disharmony in your body and also give you the appropriate supplements to make sure that, one, it either processes through your body quickly so you're not down for a week or two, but you're down for maybe feeling badly 2 or 3 days. To me, if you're not through that cold in 2 or 3 days, we need to hop to it and make sure that you're changing as your illness changes. And as an athlete, I know for sure my athletes that come into my clinic, if I tell them to not do something for 1 day, they'll climb me up the walls. I have this one athlete, I told her she couldn't really do anything for her foot right now. She just needs to let it heal. And the best thing she could do is go to a Pilates class. I said, whatever you do, don't walk on that foot too much. So she goes to a Pilates class, which is fine because it works on her core body and doesn't really engage her injured foot too much. But, and in that case, when people get sick, there are things you can take to make sure that your body heals fast.
Right. So really quickly before we get into that, because I think that's and we probably should go and do a whole episode just on different kind of contextual supplement plans, because there are some generally applicable supplement regimens and food regimens. So going into winter, so the first thing, and I heard you say this, is, which I think I want to kind of expand this topic a little bit, is that you don't process food the same in the winter as you do in the summer. And so if we think of fall and spring being transitional periods between winter and summer, the kind of night and day, so to speak, or the sun and the moon, or whatever it is, these kind of polar opposites, so in the winter, so things like, this is why we're attracted to things like soups and broths and stews and root vegetables and things. So if you're out there and you're low carb, great. You can be low carb during the winter, but you're going to be a little more carby during the winter than you are during the summer. You're just not going to be processed carby during the winter. You're going to be eating your root vegetables, your parsnips, your sweet potatoes, your those types of things. Pumpkins, your squashes, right? Squashes are fabulous for all kinds of phytonutrients and obviously organic. If you can get them at the farmer's market, even better. Those types of things, and your foods maybe are going to be a little bit fattier. This is not if you're sitting around. This is if you're continuing to do your workouts. Your workouts, ideally, if you've got a really good coach, then you're in season and you're not doing in-season training and off-season. The problem here in Southern California is we can race in December. So there are races in December because people are trying to make money holding races in December, because people will race in December because there's no other races. So we race all through the year, but actually the season ends in the rest of the country, and most of the world, it ends, in October, and then it goes the big North American Ironman from back in the day was Ironman Arizona, and that's in November. Right? And then the season really ended after that. But that was in Arizona. Think about it. What's going on in Arizona in November? Is it snowing? Maybe in northern, but not in the desert areas. It's not. They don't live in the climate that everybody else does. So that's kind of you could race tropically year-round, but, it doesn't make sense if you live in a non-tropical environment. You're just stressing your body that much more. It's not to say you should never do that. But anyway, so what do? There are basic, and seasonal eating. We should probably do a whole show just on seasonal eating, because I think as we go into the season, there's some amazing nutritious recipes. But forgetting, so too much sugar, alcohol, processed foods, and carbs, those are going to wear your body down. They're going to stress your adrenal. So back off on those. The parties are going to start up again in the winter season. So you've got to prepare yourself to not be so beholden to those party foods when you get there. Cristobal brought up a massive one. Like number one on the scale is not getting enough sleep. So sleeping well. How do you do that? We're going to do a whole episode on sleeping because it's a ginormous issue. If there's one of the stock questions I ask every single client who walks in my office, and I ask most on a weekly basis, how's your sleep? And then I just shut up because people will say, if they don't want to talk about it, they'll say, oh, it's okay. But 9 out of 10 people will say, oh, it sucks. I'm not sleeping well. Well, then we can go there and try and improve it. If you're not sleeping, you're not recovering. If you're not sleeping, you're not getting the growth hormone that you need. If you're not sleeping, your blood sugar's off. If you're not sleeping, probably your blood pressure, if it's not off now, will be. There's a whole host of things that happen because your body cannot repair itself properly. Too much coffee in the wrong times of days. I mean, that's a whole other issue. Coffee can be good, I think, to some extent, but in other areas it can be destructive. So, how do you manage that? Emotional tsunamis. So, going back to school is an emotional tsunami for children as it is for parents, because there's the overwhelm, then, there's having to deal with the overwhelm of the children, the sports season, all these things starting at once. It's a massive transition, and emotionally it takes a toll on us. So Cristobal, what are the basic things that you might have? Like if a person were to come to our house, this wouldn't be like the kind of standard realistic situation because we've got cabinets full of supplements.
We got a plethora of supplements. Right. I mean,
this is like out of control territory. But what are the kind of like the go-tos that say when your clients come in and they're not sick yet, but they're starting to feel like they're a little off? Like, what are some of the go-tos that you would recommend typically?
Well, I have Chinese herbs as well as nutritional supplements by Standard Process. And so, I'm just going to put it out there what I normally use. For the kids and for adults, to boost up the immune system, I use Immuplex or Conjuplex. Conjuplex can also be used for just fighting that low, that sense of coming on with something. And then when something is coming on, I use Anagraphis. And Anagraphis, every 2 hours, just hit it hard so that in 2 or 3 days, it's not even an issue. And the recovery is 2 to 3 days. Anything more than 2 to 3 days, it's a virus. It changes. It's going to change. So you can't think that it's going to sit there and not evolve. That's what viruses are really good at. And for those of you that don't know, I'm a techno geek. I worked in biotechnology for umpteenth years, and so I know about microbes, and I know what it takes to really, deal with microbes and how these things change in the body. So when people just go and do one thing, well, that's all great. If you can't do anything at all, take the vitamin C. That's readily available everywhere. So, but you have to get a good source of vitamin C because not every vitamin C is made equally. So if you want a good C, then I would recommend Standard Process as well as Emergen-C. I use that all the time. But, if you really want to have something, like what Manny would say, your emergency kit, I would recommend Immuplex, Conjuplex, Anagraphis. Have that in your arsenal because you want to have that if you really want to just kick something out really fast. They say in Western medicine that there is no cure for the flu, and there isn't, right? Because it evolves, and your body does have the immune function to take care of that over time. But over time, does it mean 2 to 3 days, or does that mean 2 months? Your choice. I have stuff for you. Any practitioner will have stuff for you that you could use, but this is what we use in our house. We really have that, emergency kit at the ready at all times because both Manny and I, our business is service, right? We have to make sure that we're healthy to be able to provide our services to our patients and clients, And for our children, they have to be able to go to school and learn. So we have the same issues as most people in the American household, but maybe we have a leg up because we do have this emergency kit, or we do know how to manage around illness. We do get sick. Don't get me wrong. We do get sick because there's immunity.
We're human. We forget. We miss the signs. We don't take action when
right.
we should. We're human, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But not only that, but you have immunity, your own immunity, and then there's also the the contagious issue, the virus. Which one is stronger, right? That is really what happens during contracting illness. Is which one is stronger, your immunity or the illness itself?
Right. Yeah, and the other thing I want to throw out is you got a service business and you got a sick kid, you're dead in the water. You may as well get sick yourself. So we have we'll do a very specific issue on children and pediatric health because there's a lot there, and kids are just so responsive. But as adults, it's more like getting the patterns right in their life and anything else. But so there's a couple things that I see happening. Like one is kind of early on something's just a little bit off. And so you can take preemptive action then. That's the best time to do it. And usually, because what happens is our lives are not static. They go, there's amplitude to them. They go up and down, right? They get more busy, they get less busy, more stressful, less stressful. And so in a more stressful time, we might not notice because we're suppressing our emotion during that time because it's stressful. We might not notice as much. We might have dulled our senses a little bit or we might ignore the signs as they're coming on. So, but if you do notice them, at the first moment you notice them, you take preemptive action. One, you back off if you can. Two, you take Conjaflex and I would just take, if I feel something coming on, I take antigraphics right off the bat. I don't wait because I can't afford to be out of business, at home with the whole day or 2 days or whatever, or getting my clients sick. I take them right away. And we'll link to, you can find out more about those. We'll link out in the show notes. But Complex, antigraphic complex, every day I'm taking a probiotic, every day, at least once, if not 3 times. 1, it helps you poop. 2, it helps you process your food better. And 3, it helps you get the bacterial balance in your gut, bring it back to a more positive balance. So remember, your gut is your primary immune system. It's your primary immune system. So
Agreed.
you want to create an environment or a biome, as I would say it, that is your bacterial or microbial environment inside your gut that supports health, not one that attacks the body and allows the body to be susceptible to illness. So probiotics are critical. I keep sometimes this can often happen when the weather changes or when during a stressful period or right after a stressful period, you can feel like Dave Scott after the Ironman. You can get a little depressed or feel a little low energy. Cataflex B or Max B from Premier Labs. Those are like total go-tos. Now, we're throwing product label brands out here, and it is what it is. If you have a special brand that you really like, take it. But I'm suggesting these brands because we've been in this business for 20 years, and over the years, we've tried many, many, many different things, and I've always had a go-to. Oh, yeah, this is my new go-to. But they evolve. So right now, the absolute best go-to is what I have around the house is what I recommend to my patients and my clients because that's what really works. So the other thing, because your gut is your primary immune system, you want to make sure you have adequate stomach acid in your stomach because guess what, folks? Acid kills and retards bacterial growth. So having worked in a biotech company where I grew bacterial cultures for a living, when they became overgrowth, we would shoot sulfuric acid in there to calm them down because it would kill some of them, it would retard them. That's what you do. You take stomach acid. If you're not producing enough stomach acid because you're not sleeping well, you're not eating well, you're overstressed, whatever, you need to be taking a acid supplement with your meal. So a supplement like Zypan, which is a combination of stomach acid and pancreatic enzymes. That said, I'm just going to throw them all out there. Multizyme, or a digestive enzyme, broad spectrum digestive enzyme, to make sure you're absorbing your foods again. So because many of your nutrients, your micronutrients, and your macronutrients will not be absorbed. You can eat them, but they'll go right through you if you're not producing the enzymes. And there can be a variety of reasons. You're overstressed, you're overtired. All these different things can affect your production of enzymes. So those are kind of the big hitters there. I'll put links in the show notes. There's a couple others, Thymex, Golden Seal. Those are kind of more for acute cases. I don't know that I would necessarily recommend those to general public. But Christabel mentions Chinese herbs. Those are personalized combinations of herbs for your particular scenarios. So she would take a reading, and then based on that individualized reading, she would basically mix up a personalized herbal supplement for you that's going to treat you specifically and help bring you back to balance. So there's a mixture of generalized application and then very specific. With the specific, we really recommend that you have an appointment, whether that's a phone consult, whether that's an in-person consult. Those are really where we reserve the very personalized. But like things like Contraplex, Anagraphis, probiotics, B vitamins, stomach acid, enzymes, those are broad applications that can make a huge difference for people. That's why we recommend them. So I mean, we could talk for days and hours and all that. We're going to have to do more of this. So thanks for joining, and hopefully you can come back more often. And
I'd love to. It's been fun.
I think I named about 20 topics we can have specific shows on already. So
well, it's I find it amusing that we're actually found a platform for everyday conversation.
Right. It's hard to have one, isn't it? Because there's kids running around. And so great recommendation out to folks out there in Showland. Get a conference call and schedule a conference call with your wife so you could talk about day-to-day stuff. So great. All right. So I'm going to sign out. Both of us, I guess, are going to sign out. Thanks, guys, for listening. This is Manny Aragon and Christabel Tabata, both Tabata Acupuncture and Manny Aragon Structural Performance, signing out for this episode of the Structural Performance Podcast. Thanks again, guys. Bye, and see you next week.
Bye.